Hello and welcome to Qwednesday, the show where I answer your questions with answers on a Wednesday. My name is Rory McLean and I punch cliches in the jugular. Okay, so first up, this episode is obviously the first one in a very long time. Apologies that I haven't got around to shooting another one. Obviously moving house, setting up the studio, just staying on top of work and everything. It's been a little tricky to find the time to do this, but I'm going to make it happen today. And as always, thank you very much for your questions. I've got some backed up from like ages ago when the last kind of episode went up onwards, and some more that are a bit more recent. So let's crack on. So first up is Thomas McAteer, who says, "Hey man, great content on this channel by the way. I have a question about songwriting. I often find myself with a fun little riff that I want to turn into a full song, but I really struggle finding things that work with it, and I was wondering if you have any advice on the matter. Since this is episode 2 in 1, question number 2, what is your favourite type of shark? I love hammerheads." And then there's some very kind words from Thomas about my playing, which is awesome. Thank you, man. Favourite type of shark? Honestly, don't think I could choose. They're all just awesome. So, yeah, just sharks in general. And then songwriting, the next couple of questions are very similar. So, as I've done before, I'm going to read those out and kind of bunch an answer together, which should help everyone out. So Fish has said, next Qwednesday question, it's a weird one I guess. It's a weird one to ask I guess. How do you actually put together a song? Me and my buddy currently have so many bits already made. Intro and 2 other parts using 4 chords, not the same ones but still in the same key. I'm guessing the thing I want to know is how do you actually finish a song once you have parts to it? I hope that made some sense. Nice video as always. Smiley face. And then Aditya has said, "Hey dude, killer video as usual. Any tips on connecting ideas, riffs, like working on the transitions would help me loads." So, my kind of general answer to all 3 of these, or the first thing I'd say is the easiest way without practically sitting down with your guitar and like working with your guitar, the best thing to do is to listen to other music that you enjoy and try and break down, like literally sit with a pen and paper, write down the song structure, like what key it's in, if it changes key, try and take note of the tempo changes, basically just analyse it completely as far in depth as you can, and do that with a couple of tracks that you like, preferably different styles, different artists, completely different things going on, and you'll start to kind of reverse engineer what other people are doing, which is always kind of inspiring and should spark some ideas on how you can actually come up with new sections for your song or transition from one idea to another. And yeah, that's just a really good way of doing that. It's something I did kind of by default because studying at the ACM, the music college I went to, that was part of the course there, is just breaking down the song structure, taking note of all of that side of things, and that definitely helped me, and kind of listening to other people's music, like I say, reverse engineer the track. I always, by default, again, I kind of, anytime I listen to music, my brain is just trying to pick up on the original idea for the song. Like, what was the basis for all of these other ideas? So yeah, that's definitely useful. In terms of a practical thing you can do, like connecting ideas and transitions, as always, I've got to emphasise here, any rule that I give on songwriting or making music or anything, my number 1 rule is there are no rules. So you literally just mess around, do what you want, and don't take what I'm saying here as like a set in stone thing, because it's not, and you guys should just have fun, get creative, and do your own thing. But if you're stuck, something that is kind of useful is to break down the phrase of one idea. So say you've got like an 8-note idea, and you're going ba-da, 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 bum. Take the last, or like break that idea up into a sequence of mini ideas. So the ba-da, 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 dum. You could take the ba-da, ba-da, dum, ba-da, ba-da, dum, ba-da, 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 or whatever. I'm freestyling here, but take a small section of your large idea, loop that round and see where that takes you, and if it doesn't take you anywhere, choose a different section of that original idea And that's obviously good because it's stemmed from the same idea. They should sit next to each other and kind of work. And at the very least, it may just help you get to another section after that, which comes completely spontaneously, and then you can scrap the middle bit, and you've got two transitional pieces that will work into each other. So hopefully that makes sense. And yeah, you can get something out of that. But like I say, I think the most useful thing is just to listen to artists that you like and see what they're doing and how they're doing it. And yeah, over time you'll kind of pick up, and subconsciously you'll work out how to get from one idea to another, or if you're playing a certain idea, how to create something suitable for the next section, that sort of thing. So next up is Scorchstad, who says, super cool riff as usual. I just love how all these riffs just sound like, well, you. I've been in a kind of guitar drought lately, not really feeling like practicing and lacking inspiration to play anything, really. Do you know any neat tips and tricks to get back into the swing of things? Cheers. Thumbs up. So yeah, there's a couple of things I can say to this. As I've mentioned before, I think what I do if I hit a guitar drought or a creative block or whatever you want to call it, it's usually because there's no contrast between writing and something to inspire that writing. Again, as I've said before, creativity is a byproduct of stimulation. So if you haven't been out and seen some new music, or just seen your friends, or gone for a walk, or just gone and done something completely different, there's no contrast to playing guitar to make it fun and inspiring and make you want to create something. So the first thing I'd say is, if you're in a guitar drought, it's completely fine to just put the guitar down, go and do something completely different, give yourself a bit of a break, and you'll find when you come back to it, you should have you should be way more inspired to kind of have fun with it and play guitar again. The other thing, again, as I said in the first question, a kind of practical application that you could do with this is that, again, if I'm in a bit, I think we've all been there, where you're in a guitar drought or creative block, and it's all you want to do. You kind of feel frustrated, and you can't get rid of that frustration until you've done something, or you've written something, or come up with something. So in that situation, what I do is give up on any kind of aspiration to write something or create something, but I'll just practice and stick the metronome on, practice some scales, practice scale positioning, do some finger exercises, literally just kind of like practice the very basics, and removing the pressure to actually come up with anything usually creates the freedom and the space to do so. So you're running through the scales, and I might hit a wrong note, or just get to a BPM that I'd never got to running through an exercise, and that sequence of notes at that speed triggers an idea, or something like that. So another good way to get out of kind of creative block is literally sit down, practice the basics, and try and relieve the pressure off yourself. And at the very least, even if nothing comes from it, you've played guitar that day, you've kept your skills up, and you're kind of working towards something, even if you haven't got anything out of it. So next is Lols815, who says, is there any way I can get in contact with you? I have some questions about recording that I can't find any answers to. I'd really appreciate your time. So this was a while ago that Lols left this comment, and I got back to him and I left him a message and just said, happy to answer questions, as I am with all of you guys, and left a link to my Facebook page just because it's a little easier to get in touch there. And I thought I'd include this now just to kind of emphasize that, and like, I'm more than happy if you guys want to send me a message on Facebook, or YouTube as well, but it's easier to pick them up on Facebook. Like, just hit me up, and even if you just want to say hi, have a chat, and like talk about guitars, I'm down for that. So let me know. And Taylor Shapiro has said, "Sweet loop, thanks for uploading consistent badass content." It's my pleasure, man. I have noticed that you seem to use the Boss OC3 for a lot of the loops. Would you say that's your go-to pedal when starting a loop? I'd love to hear you jam some clean ambient stuff with the Mobius and Timeline. Do you ever dabble in such affairs? So the OC3, it kind of is my go-to, although I try not to make it my go-to, purely because it's kind of in the frequency spectrum. It's like laying down a bass line and then building up from there. And it's also, for me, it's one of the most inspiring sounds. Generally, if you've got a fat octave sound, that's when I can come up with the original idea to build the loops over the top of. So I try not to make it my go-to pedal, but I guess it kind of is, just because it's inspiring and I like the way it sounds. And like I say, it's easier to build up ideas on top of a kind of a bass line. Not always, but yeah, generally I think that's why I kind of start out with the OC3. And then ambient stuff with the Mobius and Timeline. I have actually, a couple of weeks ago, I was sat and just playing guitar, and I'll hit the OC3 on, or get like some fat distortion and write some jagged riff, as you guys probably know by now. But I was playing guitar a couple of weeks ago and made a conscious effort to stick on like, massive reverb with some long delays, and kind of try and get into the ambient side of things, which I have done before, but I don't do often enough, and I'd love to kind of see where that goes. So maybe in the future I'll get some of that stuff up. That'd be cool. Slumber. How do you write your riffs? Do you use some kind of software for this, or do you write them on paper? So again, I think I've mentioned this before, but just to get back to Slumber and anyone else who maybe didn't catch that answer before, I don't sit down to record an idea until I feel like I've exhausted it in my head, or just got to the point of exhaustion. So what I mean by that is I'll write the original riff, and then I will play that round a billion times, and I'll tweak it and just make sure that it's the best that I think it could be. And then typically, again, before getting to recording it or anywhere near a computer, I'll stick it on the loop and I'll write something over the top of it, just see what other ideas are kind of tucked away inside that original idea. And another rule I follow is that I won't sit down to record or arrange a song until I have at least 3 parts to it. There's always like the main riff, which tends to be the kind of instrumental hook of the song, some kind of verse where there's room for a melody, and then either like a middle 8 or a breakdown or some sort of contrast to the other sections, or a big chorus, again where there's room for melody but it steps up dynamically. And generally, even at that point, I'll still keep going until I've mapped the song out in my head, because I find using a computer to create music can be incredibly useful, but I also, personally, I feel like, for my own stuff, I feel like I'm cutting corners and cheating a little bit when I can just record it in and go, oh, I wonder how that sounds if I swap those around, or, I'll just make that twice the speed, or whatever it is. I kind of, I still use that as a creative process in the songwriting, but I definitely like to have the song mapped out organically, or as organically as possible, before I sit down to write it out. And generally, with writing it down on paper, again, sometimes I'll make notes, but generally I don't need to, because I've played it over so many times. It's locked in my muscle memory, and yeah, I just remember them. And also there's kind of the argument, I know people that won't write their ideas down because they're working on the basis that if they can't remember the idea, then it probably wasn't good enough to remember, which I don't fully believe. But yeah, again, I don't tend to write things down. I just kind of lock them in the muscle memory and write the whole song out and play it so many times, but by the time I do come to record it, I've got a pretty good idea of what's going where and how the song's going to turn out. You ghosty toast. Hey Rory, welcome back. A question for the Wednesday show is, what are the general settings you have your amp set to? That's a very good question. I think the easiest thing to do is just to take a sweep of the front of my amp, which hopefully you guys will be seeing now. Generally, my general settings, I tend to like quite a trebly, like aggressive sound. So I cut more bass out than I think most people would. But yeah, I'll stick a sweep up so you can see my amp settings, and hopefully that helps you out. Jeremy Gens, question for another Q&A. Do you write certain riffs on certain guitars you own? For instance, would you only write your weird gypsy punk riffs on that fancy red Tysco I've come to love, or some of your cleaner riffs on the Bronco? Also, does looking at each guitar you own give you an idea for a riff just because of how it looks? One more question, because this one just came to me as I was typing. Do you have a favourite guitar that inspires you the most? It can be one you own currently or one you owned in the past. So those are cool questions. I think I don't save specific riffs for specific guitars. You know, sometimes I'll get an idea in my head before I've actually written anything on guitar, and then it's easier to go, well, this would suit the Tysco better, or the Hot Rod, or the Bronco, or you know, that sort of thing. But generally, if I'm setting up to play guitar, I just pick up the guitar that I fancy playing at that time, and I don't think that changes how I write. So yeah, there's not really a specific guitar for a specific style. That said, does looking at each guitar you own give you an idea for a riff just because of how it looks? Kind of. I find like the Tysco, the way the Tysco looks aesthetically is just, I think, sound aspect aside, that inspires me. It looks like a cool guitar, it feels cool to play, so I think that definitely puts me in a headspace to write in a particular way. Yeah. And favourite guitar that inspires me the most? I guess off the back of what I just said, it would have to be the Tysco. I kind of, any guitar I pick up, you're just working with the fretboard, and you're still working, you know, it all works the same way. So I could pick up a Les Paul, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I could still pick up a Les Paul and write in the same way I do on any other guitar. So the Tysco is the most inspiring, but I don't think it's that big of a factor. Sam D, gnarly my dude, love the addition of keys in this video. Were the skills you earned in learning one instrument easily transferable into learning another? In other words, did you know how to play guitar? Did knowing how to play guitar help you learn keyboard, or vice versa? Yeah, to a degree. I think the only music lessons I've had have really been on bass, which obviously transferred really easily to guitar because the mechanics of it are the same. But the music theory that I picked up in kind of bass guitar lessons definitely helped me transfer the small amount of skill I have on a keyboard to the keyboard. I think, you know, once you know where middle C is, you can then work out your scale shapes, and once you've learnt your scale shapes, it's then pretty easy to work out some chord shapes and just take it from there. So it was definitely guitar that helped my keyboard playing to the small level that it's at. More kind of the music theory though, I think. Like if you get your music theory down, you can apply it really to any instrument, as long as you know how it intonates and how the notes work on it. Yeah, it's a pretty cool skill. So hope that helps. Tyler Elliott, when are the other series coming back? Right now. The karma of yours truly. Yes, Dillinger. Also for Qwednesday, do you like sharks? I like sharks. This was on Rory Commends, the last episode of Rory Commends, where I recommended the latest Dillinger album, Disassociation. It was on the day it had been released, so I hadn't listened to it, but I have not stopped listening to it since, and definitely recommend going and checking that out. I've listened to it like 3 or 4 times today alone, so it's definitely very cool. Nicky Reagan, does that old school phone still work? Great video, buddy. Thank you very much, man. So the phone Nicky's on about is this one, and it does work, but not as a phone. It's actually a modified kind of mic now. It's got a little jack output on the back, and yeah, it's just a microphone. But it does work as a mic. And then last up for this episode is Stewie Doo, who says, new pickup in the Chapman, what is it? Cool loop as always. Thank you very much, man. So, I will be shooting a separate video on this at some point very, very soon, but I have just swapped out the pickup in the hot rod to a House of Tone 4-5. It's an incredibly bitey, clear, just very well-defined pickup, and I'm incredibly impressed with it. Yeah, a friend recommended it to me, and I'm very glad he did, because it's awesome. So you guys can probably hear in the last lot of Looping Mondays I've used this, just because I'm loving this so much. I've played it loads, and you can kind of hear the difference in that. Yeah, it's a great pickup, and it's the House of Tone 4-5, so check them out. I'll leave a link in the description below, actually. You can go and check out their range. They're very cool. Okay, so there we go. As always, thank you guys so much for your questions and comments, and also just being patient while I get back round to kind of getting all these series up and running again. I really, really enjoy doing these. It's wicked knowing that there are people all over the world in different countries just kind of watching and asking questions and getting involved. So I genuinely love this, and it's a shame that it's taken this long to get back, but hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode and got something out of it, and yeah, hopefully it will be back long term and here to stay. The only thing I'm not sure of is it's whether I'll be able to get it done every Wednesday. I'll obviously do my best, and I promise I will. But yeah, it may be a case that I either have to shortlist like 3 or 4 questions for future episodes, or I just shoot a video when I actually can and get back to everyone, as I've been trying to. It's kind of got to the point now, which is amazing, but where there's so many questions and people commenting that it takes quite a while to sit down and shoot these videos. I've had to shortlist questions just for this episode, so apologies if your question hasn't been answered this week as well. But as always, I've tried to pick the ones that will be most helpful or crossover where there's duplicate kind of questions. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed this. I'll see you guys soon for some more videos. Until then, peace out. I've been Rory.